Tina Martynowicz. She's Energy Coordinator for Region 9 of the United States Environmental Protection Agency. Trina serves as a technical lead to various grant programs to reduce air pollution through the adoption of innovative, cleaner technologies. And Trina will be introducing the other panelists.
Great, thank you, and thank you for having us. Our panel members are gonna come up here. This is gonna be a pretty informal discussion. After, we're gonna hear from each of our panelists for some brief remarks. But first, wanted to engage you all after lunch and make sure you're still awake. We have an interactive poll, so if you could bring up your cell phone, please, and take a photo of that QR code. We have 3 just very brief questions that we're asking you all that we would definitely love each of your responses for. So the first one is here, is your port, or whichever port maybe you work with the closest or the most, have they undertaken activities for net zero operations? So yes, no, you're not sure, which is very likely, or you don't even work with a port, you just wanted to come to Guam for a tropical work vacation. So please choose one of those and you'll see all the responses. We'll just give it a minute or so. And putting a plug for this great interactive tool, if you are presenting tomorrow, you could still submit some interactive questions. Go find Jared at the Port Authority of Guam. We're clearly the first panel to be including this. Sorry, Jared. Okay, sorry, and the clicker, oh. Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Clearly the first one's here. All right. Oh, we have a few people who don't work for HORSE. I mean, they could be the significant others. So, all right, here's a response. And so the next question, roughly how many pieces of zero-emission port equipment, so such as yard hostler trucks, it could be gantry cranes, etc., tugboats even, are deployed at your port, or once again, the ports that you work the closest with? Please respond. Yeah, I realized after the fact, maybe over 100 is a little too ambitious. So maybe in 5 years, we'll re-ask that question. All right, thanks everyone for your response. And then just the final question here, this is a lot of words, I know, but I would love to hear from you on what are your top challenges your port, or once again, the ports that you work with, face on becoming net zero? What are those challenges? So is it cost, inadequate funding? Is it lack of leadership or political will? Is it the impacts to competitiveness? Pushback by port partners? Operational challenges? Technological immaturity? Infrastructure deployment challenges? Alternative fuel viability? Electrical grid constraints? Increased automation or just a lack of port jobs? Overall complexity of this topic, which I think is a legitimate option, or other. And if you choose other, we're gonna ask you to raise your hand and what is that other, because I'm sure there are others that we missed. But yeah, you could choose up to 5 of these options. You don't have to choose 5, but just up to 5. And wow, these results are fascinating. Not too shocking. I think we all are not surprised that cost is a very top contender. Technology and maturity, I think, is another concern. Electrical grid constraints, especially here on any islands. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for participating. Really appreciate it. And so with that, I'm going to start introducing our first speaker. We have the Port of Oakland Director, Kristi McKenney. She's been serving as the Executive Director of the Port of Oakland since March of 2025, and the first female ever to serve in this position at the port. She previously served as the Chief Operating Officer at the start of COVID, which I'm sure was no easy task for such a huge job. She has helped secure hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of mostly federal and state funding, which I'm sure we'll hear about today, to help the port become more sustainable. She has also, I have personal experience working with the port since 2009, has really engaged the community, honestly, like no other port I've seen. I'm guessing we'll hear a little bit about that too. And she started her initial work engaging the community, working directly for the Oakland airport, and now brings that, of course, more broadly to the broader port. And as we heard from Rory at the Port Authority of Guam this morning, Kristi is actually building an institution. I'm not sure she is actually letting her staff go get massages or kind of mental health during a workday, but I do know that she has really supported and championed hiring women in leadership positions, especially women engineers at the port, which I personally am so happy, and I think that says a lot about her. She is, from the little interaction that we've had since the start of this conference, a really amazing individual. She and her, when she's not at the port working, she spends her time in the end of August or early September camping in a very dusty, harsh environment called Black Rock City, where I also reside for a week or so, and there's a few others here in the room who do as well. So with that, I have the honor of introducing and welcoming Kristi McKenney, excuse me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That felt like my whole life story there, but thank you. I appreciate that. So happy to be here with you. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of the Port of Oakland and then jump into our more focus area on zero emissions and some of the things we're doing. We, in fact, just joined APP. Oh, this is a clicker for going forward. Great. This is the, we just joined in the last year at the great urging and convincing of Conchita, so thank you very much for that. And I must say I'm extremely impressed. This is an excellent gathering, and I'm so glad that we've joined and we're participating, and I look forward to welcoming you to California, where Stockton will be hosting you, but we're just down the road, so please come by and say hi to us as well. So let's get going. There we go. So this is just sort of a cartoon map that shows you we're really responsible for the entire waterfront of the city of Oakland. We are an independent department. We have our own fiduciary responsibility, our own staff, our own budgeting, and our board is nominated by the mayor and appointed by the council. And once they're appointed, they have 4-year terms and have that independent fiduciary responsibility. You can see the purple area is really right up against the Bay Bridge, and we have property that even spills over to the other side of the Bay Bridge. And that's mainly our seaport area, about 1,300 acres, with 4 terminals, including a mountain terminal that we talked about earlier when you saw the services that we provide to here. We've also got a large public park out there. You start to make your way down the waterfront to the red areas, and that's commercial real estate. So we have a variety of different types of commercial real estate. We're not allowed to have housing on our property, but we have restaurants and shops and other kinds of businesses. And you keep heading down and you get down towards that red area at the bottom and the blue. And now you're into more park area, but you also have a business park, the airport business park that we have jurisdiction over, the red, and then the Oakland San Francisco Bay Airport, which is on San Francisco Bay, even though some people didn't seem to believe that. That's another story I can tell you over drinks. And so that the port, after it was actually formed in 1927, built this airport, and they built the original airport in a year. That's like the way it used to be done. And we're going to talk today about that's not how it happens anymore, right? So that's the port. And of course we have, massive impacts on the community in Northern California and the larger region, even reaching into other states. Alameda County, the county that we're in, is a very large county in California. And if you take all the port property, we are the second largest property taxpayer in our county, only behind Tesla. and that's because Tesla started there in Fremont and has a huge factory there and owns a lot of property. So we have, if you just even think about the regional governments and the benefits they have, never mind the 100,000 jobs and the billions of investment and economic impact that we have. And even just at our airport, you know, these are spaces and places where people physically come to work. And at our airport, about 8,000 people come to work every day. So these are really important to our community, to our businesses, and our general economic well-being. This is a little bit about our seaport. We are every year you might vacillate a little bit, 9th or 10th largest in the country. 4th busiest on the West Coast. We are the #1 U.S. port, typically in any given month for refrigerated exports. Really importantly, Oakland is about a 50% export, 50% import. That's extremely rare in the United States. So that's a unique role that we play. It makes us, I think, very important to the overall ecosystem and economics. And what that means is we've got cargo coming from far Midwest all the way to Oakland to get on that vessel as its last stop before it heads back to Asia to sell those exports to other countries. And again, I mentioned the 4 marine terminals, and we're clicking at about 2.25 million TEUs. So that's a snapshot of us. I wanted to just show a little bit at the airport as we move into the zero emissions conversation, because we actually, one of the benefits I had of being out at the airport for a long time was we did a lot of work out there. So I've done this before, really before the seaport ever started moving in this direction. We have had ground power and preconditioned air at our gates for decades, so aircraft turn off their engines and plug in when they come to our airport. We also have sustainable aviation fuel. We had some of the largest uptake of that for both our business and commercial aviation in the recent past. We also have a significant amount. I have not found an airport yet. They might be out there that has the largest number of percentage of our ground support equipment electrified. And really importantly, and good lesson for the port side, that was a business decision that our airlines made. They realized that it was going to be cheaper to maintain and operate this equipment than continuing to use diesel equipment. So we didn't have to spend a dime on that equipment. We did help by installing some chargers at the airport. And we also have a whole bus yard for electric bus charging. We have a lot of electric rental vehicles. All of our fleet, wherever it possibly can, has been converted to electric as well. So just to give you a snapshot of what we've already done out there. And now we're going to focus in on the seaport. So the seaport has many different projects going on, and I would be remiss if I didn't give big thanks to both our MERAD and EPA federal friends because they've been tremendously supportive of us in a lot of work that we need to do, both physical infrastructure as well as our zero emissions program. We are in a very urban area. We are in communities that have been significantly impacted by urbanization, by industrialization, and it's incumbent upon us to work extremely closely with these communities and look everywhere we can for what are their needs, what do they want out of the port, where can we find co-benefits, you know, not just that somebody has got a job, but how are these communities that are immediately impacted, how are they actually being able to be involved and engaged with the port. And so many of these programs, we have an ongoing monthly electrification committee that is largely populated by our local, state, and some federal regulators, as well as nonprofits who work in this space, like Earth Justice and Pacific Environment, and then our community members. And really, a lot of the work we've done has been born out of what those priorities are. And it's really been, I think, early on, the port, some in the port are historically, they're afraid to bring these people in. You know, they're just going to be unhappy with us. They're going to yell at us. They're not going to like us. But at the end of the day, when you sit down and we do it over lunch, so when you break bread together and you really start to have those conversations, you know, why is it hard for a drayage truck to become electrified? There's a myriad of reasons that people just have no clue about. You know, for example, most of them in California are independent owner operators, and they may drive, you know, 50 miles one day, 500 miles another day, and they might drive their kids to the lake in their truck on the weekend. So these are not people who are, it's not an Amazon fleet that you can just go home and you can charge it at night. So things like that, those were real conversations we could have, and they started to understand and work with us to how do we solve these things. So at the seaport, we have had shore power at 100% of our berths for since the mid-2013, 14, 15 era. We now run a 96, 98% plug-in rate every month. So that's phenomenal. While not required, we do, as a policy matter, require lay berths, and we have quite a few lay berths, including federal vessels, which we're pleased to have. But we do require those to also plug in and use shore power, again, so we're not just sitting there burning emissions closest to the community. We also have a significant amount of infrastructure going in. One of the unique things about the Port of Oakland is that we are a public utility for electricity. So we are able to, one, we're able to give our tenants a better rate, but two, we're also able to use our rate-making authority to reimburse ourselves and make sure we can build out the electrical infrastructure that we need at the port. So we can get into the questions, we'll get into some more details, but I just want to give you some of those overviews. The really big thing for us right now that we're in the midst of implementing is our EPA Clean Ports program. It's almost a $500 million program, $322 million grant from the federal government. It's all about equipment. It's 600 pieces of equipment, on-dock equipment, as well as drayage trucks. And it's got dozens of partners, including our community groups, who are deeply engaged in this process and are actually managing a lot of the community engagement for us and are being paid for that because it is work, and they are doing that work with us and for us. So that program is off to the races now, and we are extremely pleased that we're starting to see all our agreements are in place, and we're starting to see them selecting equipment. And we have many other programs that are complementing that, where we're installing you know, chargers and things like that. So we can get into the details of that as we talk through. And I think that was, I did want to just highlight a few other things to think about, not just zero emissions, but also on this front. We do have an MOU on green shipping corridors with Yokohama, and we have a relationship with them. They're also a sister port. Green Marine certification, we are in that program. If you don't know about that, please talk to me. I encourage you. And we're working on a sustainability management plan that'll roll all of this up and make it really visible and tangible to our community. And I think that was, oh, I can talk about this later. It's something that I think is really important because we've all been talking about our resiliency. So, but I won't dwell on that right now.
Great, thank you, Kristi. Yeah, maybe pull up that slide after Joe's presentation. So I'm happy to introduce Joe Carrillo. He serves as the Northern California Regional Vice President for SSA Pacific, which is a subsidy of the global terminal operator, or Terminator, SSA Marine, which is the world's largest privately held stevedore company in the world, operating in over 250 locations. Joe is currently in his 17th year at SSA Marine and has gained a wealth of knowledge in the global supply chain process. He actually had worked in the past at seaports such as Long Beach, Mexico, and even in Panama. Since 2009, SSA Marine has been working with the Port of Long Beach, who also received EPA DERA grant that Kim Mack, my colleague, presented on earlier. So I've been working just as long with SSA and their amazing work, which we'll learn about more. And a fun tidbit about Joe that I also just learned, before working in the ports field, he actually started his career as a professional baseball player for the minor league team, the St. Louisiana Cardinals, and was drafted right out of college for that. So with that, Joe, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Trina. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone that's here. The majority of people, I look out into the audience, I either worked with you, know you. I've been part of this group for about 8 years now. I moved back to Northern California. I'm a native of California, back in 2000, end of 16. And I want to thank all the port authorities, agencies, people I know that were, talked to year over year about like decarbonizing. It's been a journey for us, and ever since 2017 when I moved here, I heard all of this decarbonization of seaports and air quality action plans, and it just kind of touched me, and I was like, okay, well, let's look into it and see what we can do, because a lot of our ports, like Trina mentioned, down in Long Beach, they were doing a lot of things on our container side. So I work on the conventional business where it's kind of a non-container ports, where we do primarily like break bulk, like at the Port of Stockton, West Sacramento. We did cars in Benicia, but then we have all your other ports outside of the big container hubs. We do all the smaller ports where sometimes it's a little hard to get things done, passed through with zero emission technology, but with good partners you can. So basically, I'm just going to go over just a couple things here. Is it this one? Green one. Yeah. Uh-oh, sorry, go back. Sorry. Okay. I'm just going to brief you guys a little bit before we get going. I'm going to make it pretty quick. Just about who we are, Carex, SSA Marine, basically go over our progression in GHG. I thank you for, what was our speaker that just got done, Terry? Was it Terry? Sure. Tara. Thank you for kicking it off, and I'm going to share a little about where we're at with our 2022 baseline and then where we're at today with that. And then I'll talk a little bit about some of our strategies and then move into some of our takeaways very briefly and then get into the panel questions. So Carex SSA Marine, Carex is our holding company. We have numerous companies under Carex. We have rail management services, that's an intermodal. We have over 50 plus rail hubs we work at for all your Class 1 railroads throughout the US. We also have Tideworks Technology, and that's a terminal operating system company we own and operate, and we have I think over a couple hundred sites that we deploy our operating systems to for all mainly big container ports throughout the globe. And lastly is our terminal operator model, which is SSA Marine, and basically we're over 200 plus locations throughout the globe, and I was fortunate enough to work in Panama and Mexico for the company. So I got to see a lot of different things that we did there. And it was interesting, I was just thinking when I was up here in 2000 and I was down in Panama from 2011 to 2016, and we started electrifying and decarbonizing when I was there. In like 2014, we were moving away from diesel rubber tire gantry cranes and making them electric. We had a docked, what's it called, a barge, a hydro barge that basically can serve the whole city we worked at. If the power went out in the city, we were able to control the whole power to light up the city. So I was thinking about that now. We did that in Panama when I was there. So I already had a start to being up to California and starting this again. So it worked out really well. We also are in the cruise business. Like I mentioned, we're over 20,000 employees. We handle all types of commodities and cargoes throughout the globe. That's a good footprint of where we are, and kind of, you see the dots, they're all different. The green ones, there's not a lot of them, but those are our big revenue drivers. Those are your big container ports throughout the globe. And then you have the cruise lines, or the light green, and then you have the marine, SSA Marine Conventional. I'll get more into that later, because those are like the smaller, like the strategic ports that are outer ports, where they're kind of, we have them scattered throughout the locations. We have over 50 plus locations, and that's kind of the division I work under. And then you can see the purple are all your kind of rail hubs for Class 1 railroads. So since 2022, basically we created what was mentioned earlier today about a baseline and how we're gonna like track our emission reductions. And so from 2022 to 2025, we reduced our reductions by 30%, with another, I believe, what does it say up there? It's another 50% by 2035. So these are things that we started to monitor, and we basically are part of like Green Marine certification. We have like 16 terminals that we work with to help us, like a third party, to guide our progress on how we're doing with these. So kind of every year we're telling on ourselves and how we're gonna get better. So that helped a lot to get these. And then all the tracking, like was mentioned earlier in other speakers' comments. Kind of our strategy for the company is based on like 8 buckets that we work on, 8 different ways we can reduce emissions. You know, right now we all talk about equipment, but there's all different types of ways to decarbonize at a net zero port, or trying to get to net zero when it comes to reducing emissions. And the biggest ones we're doing right now as a company, we're electrifying our Che everywhere we can, or terminal RTGs. Also in renewable fuels, I think all of our California personnel are using R99, so it's a huge, and all the way up and down, I think in Panama as well, we're using them in numerous locations throughout, wherever we can get the renewable diesel. And then also we're touching on hydrogen, and a lot of the places where we kind of lease the land, we're doing LED upgrades all the time. And then where I work at, in a location where we have solar, and so we have a PPA agreement, so we're basically almost at net zero at that location with all electric equipment working there, except for three more diesel forklifts left to go. I'll just, you guys can read that, but overall, I mean, since I don't know, 2009, $300 million of funding that we've been blessed to work with the port authorities. A lot of times these funding pots are with a public partner. So thank you for all the ports here that have worked with us, and the agencies to help us get that funding to kind of get into. We have over 225 pieces of equipment throughout our whole company that are all zero emission. And we're going to continue to move that way with some of the grants we'll talk about later on with the EPA as well. And some of our takeaways in general, like it's the strategies. I mean, I'll share my experience, and you guys can read the slide, but in the startup and like at the Port of Stockton, it's having a good partner and seeing how like we share knowledge and information with partners, and coming up with a large capacity forklift at the Port of Stockton back in 2017. We shared ideas, and they're like, okay, let's try this out. And that was one of the first grants we started when I moved here. And that same forklift now, I think we have like 32, 42. We have over like 44, 46 of those large capacity 36,000 pound forklifts in operations in Stockton and West Sacramento, thanks to some agencies. And these are actual fleets working, right? These are large capacity in operations. They're not pilot program, they're like in operations. So, but through that time, from 2020 when the first one was brought out to now, it's been a journey. We went from the first generation battery, now we're on the 5th generation. So those are things that we were able to share to the industry, and now there's over 100 of those similar type machines throughout California and about 4 or 5 other states. So that's kind of what we kind of try to do for the industry, is kind of be that leader to where, hey, we'll raise our hand, and we'll work with our partners to pilot and then become fleets in the future.
Great, thank you, Joe. Clearly 2 leaders, I would say not just here on the Pacific, but clearly in the world, at least for sure in the US, of really deploying the cleanest, most sustainable, fill in the blank, right? Not just vehicles, but renewable energy to energy efficiency and everything in between. So thank you so much for being here. This format, we're gonna kind of just have a free flow, more interactive discussion. But please, if you have questions, make sure and jot them down. We will make sure we have time at the end to answer those questions. We're gonna touch on 6 different topics, and excited to dive right in. So the first question is, what has your port done in terminal operators as well over roughly, I would say maybe the past 15 years or so, in pursuing sustainable, green, net zero, or other environmental initiatives? I know both of you kind of touched on that a bit, but if there's anything maybe you want to dive in deeper for, please.
Yeah, I would just say we have been highly focused on that. Obviously, California as a state has also been a leader. So there's policy leadership, there's support at various levels of government. But really, I think an important piece has been this transition from, some of the real basics, right? There was a lot of low-hanging fruit early on. I mean, honestly, our diesel particulate reduction is 96% from 2005, because that was a lot of low-hanging fruit. Now we're kind of down to the harder stuff to decarbonize, technology that didn't exist in 2005 or even 10 years ago. So that it's really been digging in and figuring out how do we start tackling what's still out there that's still having an impact, and really find the technologies and trial technologies. And I think a big part of the change too is moving from just doing the bare minimum to saying this is really about the future. I mean, this next level of technology is so critical. I would hate to see America fall behind, because I've traveled in Europe, I've traveled in Asia, and they are on fire in terms of the technology that we're talking about, right? And they see the business opportunity, and they see the jobs that are created, and they, a lot of these people don't even talk about the environmental benefits, frankly. So I want to, emphasize that point that this is also about bringing us all along into the future together, and it has these great benefits for our health and community.
Yeah, just to add as well, it's since 2000, in early 2000s, but even Port of Oakland, we had to do shore power there, right? So getting involved early with the kind of the startup of decarbonization with shore power at our Oakland International Container Terminal back in the early 2000s. But overall, for us in general, it's kind of been a moving target with piloting of different types of equipment, top handlers that would work for 5 hours and then take 13 hours to charge, and then going to the generation 2, and then all your yard trucks that we deployed early on, that from 3 different manufacturers. One manufacturer closed their doors. So just all these different things early on that we found that was someone had to do it, and with the agency and the ports and ourselves, it's like a trio of forward thinkers to get there. And so for us, it was that challenging times when you're the first one to the market, so you're gonna, it's kind of hard to take the pain in the beginning, but then it's gonna affect the whole entire industry later on. So that's how we looked at it, is okay, we'll take it because in certain places we can do that, and then hopefully it helps the entire industry.
Great, thank you. What are your thoughts on how ports and their partners, so partners could be anyone from the terminal operators to other government agencies, the utilities, communities, et cetera. So how could the port and their partners really work together to accelerate decarbonization or ultimately reducing air emissions at the ports?
Yeah, well, I think literally the two of us are doing it. Both of our organizations are working together. That partnership is so critical. It's on our signs. We've been talking about it here as an association. But that partnership is so critical with our business partners, with even with the beneficial cargo owners, who can also have a stake in what they want to see in terms of moving their goods and their products to market. And so we have to work together, because we each have this piece of the pie, and we don't get the whole pie unless we all make sure that our pieces all fit together. So I think that's been really important, is a lot of working together, a lot of listening to each other. That drayage truck example, I shared that with an EPA senior, presidential appointee in the last administration. They really, why should they know? They don't know, right? And so having that real dialogue around how does it really work, boots on the ground, what is really going to move the needle and make it work, is super important.
Yeah, just to add, it's this partnership, and partnership. All 3 factors play a big role in getting these things done. I mean, it's agencies, it's someone like a private company like ourselves, SSA, and the port authorities to say, okay, can we do this? And how are we going to do it? And we had hiccups to do numerous projects, but we've learned from them. And by learning from them, now we're in, 15 years ago, or even 10 years ago, now we're at a point where we're seeing millions of dollars from EPA to help go further. And if we didn't do those, in the last 10 years of decarbonizing, we wouldn't be where we're at today to deploy that much equipment. I mean, you're looking at over, I don't know, thousands of pieces of equipment throughout the U.S. Coming up in the coming couple years.
Thanks. Moving on to electrification, infrastructure, and technology. Kristi, you're in a very unique and I would say probably wonderful position that you're at where the port is its own public utility. But Joe, I'm sure that you've seen other ports where that's not the case, where they're relying on other grids, right, and other people's power. So I'd love to hear kind of what are some of the practical challenges, but also the opportunities of transitioning to zero emissions, I think especially around electrification, the infrastructure, and then deploying cleaner technologies.
Sure. I mean, unfortunately, electrical infrastructure takes an enormous amount of time to deploy. It takes a long time to design, takes a long time to build. I don't understand, I don't know why more people aren't going into the business of building all this gear, because it's like 5 years for that transformer, really? I'm hoping somebody's out there trying to fix that piece. But really what we did as, we're basically a wholesale customer of PG&E's, our investor-owned utility. And what we really did is we actually paid them to do the studies to figure out what it would take to bring more power to the substation that feeds our 115 kV line to our seaport, and then at the other end of the city, the substation that feeds our airport. And it was rocky at first and difficult. And I finally, found some keys. I had to get the right person and somebody who really knew the inside scoop and get to the right people. And once I was able to do that and we paid them to do these studies, the light bulb went off for them. And so I think you have to be really aggressive about it, but, working collaboratively with them, but really pushing, finding ways to get in with your utility, whether it's your public utility or whether it's an investor-owned utility, and start to sell them on this idea. They suddenly realized this was going to be, a huge business for them. And they took over these projects after telling us it was going to be $371 million to bring more power over the hill to us in Oakland. They're doing that project now. We now have a project at each of those substations on each end of the city to bring significantly more power that is approved by our state grid authority, so the CAISO, and it will be implemented. And of course, it's going to take years, but that was a huge step. So you really have to get in there. You have to really work hard. You might even have to shed some of your own resources to get it going. But that was really important for us in terms of moving the needle on the equipment. I do think a huge challenge is how fast the technology is moving. I mean, the batteries are moving so fast, and we're not used to this. We're used to buying a car and driving it for a while, right? We're used to building infrastructure and concrete that lasts for decades. And now all of a sudden, you're looking at buying technology that might be, outmoded and something's better literally 2, 3, 4 years from now. That's a bit of a scary thing. And I don't have an answer for that. I'm just putting it out there that as we move so rapidly, and that's why, again, I come back to that technology and us being in the forefront and playing in this space, because we need to control our own destiny in that regard.
So for us, it's like one of the things that we face. It's I smile because, we're the private entity. We're like either a leaseholder or we're a guest at a port, and we're like always working to get the ship loaded as efficient and safe as possible. So just like that is our core business. Like doing everything is our core business. Like it's fast and efficient. So sometimes when we're waiting on infrastructure and as a stevedore, it's like, what's taking so long, Port Authority? Why is it happening? So we don't know the backstory about all of it. So it's like learning, educating ourselves with our port authorities, a lot of meetings, because sometimes we don't have that type of information provided to us as a tenant or as a stevedore. So we have to really, when it starts to show itself, is really be close to the partnerships and say, okay, how's it happening? Because for me, I have managers that manage at all these ports, and then they have to basically, I got to tell them this is the whys of it all, and why it's taking a longer time than they would want, because they want to get it like yesterday and put it in and let's go to work. So I think for us, it's being patient as a company with our port authorities, and because they have to go through all the process, and also knowing how much power, they explaining to us how much power is coming into the port, the time of when they are doing these projects, and that takes time, like Kristi mentioned, it takes time. So We just have to kind of, in my case, some of my cases, just be more patient and understanding.
Thanks. Keeping on a kind of similar thread here about productivity, I'm interested in your thoughts of while ports are transitioning, how to a net zero emission activities, how are they able to maintain safety, productivity, reliability, and strong customer service in that transition? And to your point of technology is constantly changing, so how are you able to kind of continue those operations and ensure the ports are still operating smoothly?
Yeah, I mean, I do think, you know, we're in 24/7 businesses, whether it's the airport or the seaport, frankly. And so we're very adept at doing infrastructure and working around schedules. It costs more, there's no question about it, but we're very adept at working with our partners, whether it's the terminal operators, and same thing at the airport with airlines, and really making sure that as projects are deployed, we work around that business schedule. You know, we can't just close something and say, see you in a few months or a year, right? So that's something we know how to do with those physical infrastructure projects. We've been doing it a long time. So it's a matter of just continuing to carry that forward with these, you know, different kind of projects.
No, and in our case, it's all about, you know, the grant funding is huge. I mean, for example, one forklift that we buy, the one I mentioned earlier, it's about $600,000. And a Tier 4 final diesel is still about $300,000. So it's about half the cost still today. And everyone, when we started this whole journey, everyone's like, okay, the prices are gonna go down, it's gonna be a lot better, and the prices are just going up. And so we're like, okay, I'm glad we did it now, but on the other hand, like you mentioned, Kristi, earlier, is we're at Gen 5 batteries on the forklift we have. Like our last forklift, the ones that just came out for like our competitors, like, and they're not using them at our location, but they have Gen 5 technology, so it's a lot smoother, easier. So now on the workforce side, they're like, we want to go work for that company because they have all the new equipment. So you got to be up to date with equipment, and it's a variable pooled like union. So they know they get to choose where they go every day. So for us, we got to be up to par with new technology. So right now, like for us, we're trying to look at ways to move our first generation forklifts into repower, and actually not repower as in diesel to electric, but electric to electric. And that's something we're looking at too in the future. So the forklifts we have now that we've taken out in Stockton, life cycle on that could be 20 years. And it's just changing of the power. So the metal's the metal, the carriage is the carriage. It's just being able to repower and be efficient on that side.
How about the ports and terminal operators and justifying funding for these sustainable investments? I got to say, and for those who have ever had a more recent US EPA grant, we have a whole lot of new requirements as of the past, I would say 2-3 years, around Build America, Buy America requirements. All federal funding infrastructure now is being required a certain percentage of the material to be built in the US, with the thoughts that that would increase jobs ultimately in the US. I have my personal take, and that's another drink conversation. But unfortunately, a lot of these technologies, a lot of these earlier stage zero emission technologies are just not being built, unfortunately, in the US, right? Especially anything with batteries. We also have, with the federal government, and I know this trickles down to state and local grants as well also, but what we kind of call the environmental cross-cutters, but like the NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act, Meeting Endangered Species Act, and NOAA, and a lot of other federal requirements that we never had to face for our infrastructure grants before. There are a lot of hoops to jump through. It can't be easy. And so, yeah, kind of what have been kind of your lessons learned or maybe successes just more broadly around funding, economics, and the business value case?
Yeah, there's no question it's a huge challenge, and there's new requirements every 5 minutes, it feels like, for sure. And I understand where they come from. We're a public agency as well. But really a lot of this is developing your people and your teams. You know, we heard from consultants that are helping supports. If you find folks out there who specialize in this, who have that experience, that you can bring on your team and as consulting, that's a good avenue. And there are some folks who are really specialized in some of these areas that have been incredibly helpful, and I'm happy to share that. But it's also, we had to set up new staffing. I mean, I have people dedicated to the grant program and managing, because even if you're using consultants, it's still a lot of work on your end. And then gratefully, a lot of the federal programs have allowed us to then also bring on support. If we win the grant, actually bring on support to help us administer it, because it's a lot harder for the public to ramp up and ramp down. I do need to have some key folks dedicated that we didn't used to internally, but most of this is going to come and go, right? So I really need to have that ability. So I really appreciate the granting agencies that have given us that flexibility to kind of ramp up and ramp back using outside support. But finding people who are really experienced and that you work well with it, again, that partnership, I think is really important. And then working very closely with our tenants. I mean, we're buying 10 trucks as a port as part of our EPA Clean Ports grant, for example. Very unusual. It was a crazy idea I had one night, and then my team is implementing it. It'll be like a library. Truckers can come and they can check it out for a day, an hour, a week, whatever they want. Because once you get in some of these vehicles, they're amazing. The ride, the power, everything about it is way better than what you used to drive. So we're excited to do that. But most of everything we're doing is going to be somebody else. You're going to be having to operate it and own it. So really, it's all about that partnership. Again, we come back to that.
Yeah, and just to add, with technology and change of we'll say energy from like diesel to electric, one thing that that I would like to comment is, be ready for the workforce to, if you have a union workforce, be ready to let them ease into the product, because we found that in the beginning, I would say 80% of the workforce didn't want to use the machines, and it took about 3 years to shift that over. So it was just, human nature. We don't like change, and the way the machines were like acting, like their performance levels or the way they worked certain ways, and I can talk to people after about what that was, but it wasn't this. It was like just the maneuverability and things. It was nice and smooth, but there was a lot of complications and a lot of we had to work with the workforce when they came out and start to go little by little and make adjustments to these machines, because it was the different way they rode and the way they handled cargo. So that was a big thing for us. And then now going from 5 hours at a time on a charge to almost 13 to 14 hours on a charge within 5 years. I mean, that's tripling the energy on the machine. It's incredible. I mean, and it's going to get more and more efficient as we move forward. So that's what we're finding almost.
And my final question, so please, audience, start thinking of your own questions. What will the next generation of sustainable ports look like if you had your crystal ball?
Well, I actually think we can see the horizon where we can be zero emission, and that's really, really, really exciting, because that wasn't true not that long ago. If we keep funding, we keep investing in America, we keep investing in these products being made here, and keep doing the right things, we will get there, and it'll not be that long and that far away. And so I think we do need to keep deciding that that's a priority to invest in. And I think we should become leaders in this technology and start, selling it. And that can be one of our exports that goes out in our containers. So that's certainly my hope, and I see no reason why we can't get there. At this point, there's really many, many, many of the roadblocks have been understood, studied, and either removed or addressed. And so, I think we're going to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're moving that right. Like I said, we had 225 units out there deployed, working and operating all types of equipment. But the one thing, we couldn't do that without this partnership with the funding, the partners in the ports, and for us it's huge. It's huge for us, and to, you know, to close, it's one of those things where you can't do it alone. I can't run this. And some of the ports I work at and some of the outer ports, they don't have to be as forward thinking as the larger ports where they have bigger action plans or mandates or regulations. They're doing them because they want to make a difference in where they work and operate in their communities, which I find, I mean, and I kind of clung on to that and said, okay, I want to do that too at these ports where we don't even have regulations. We don't even have a ruling to go zero emission, but we're doing it because, you know, I was in Long Beach for one of the we have a Outer Harbor 55. We had a 44 forklift, all electric, and it was all zero emission there. And basically, one of the workers went onto the podium when they were like having the celebration, and he said, "I love these machines because when you drive in pallet-sized cargo, you drive backwards." And he goes, "I get to go home with a clean face." Because the smoke was going in and then he would get black smog all over. And that was from a worker, a union worker that picks up that job all the time. And I mean, it makes me kind of like, it sees that we're making a difference. So you know, thank you all for making that difference, that are all here that I know and worked with. And it's all the way down to that person on the job, that 8-hour shift. You know, just that touched me. And then other things touched me too, watching, you know, us change and having no diesel plumes inside of a shed. Things like that are amazing to watch and see that we are getting better and we can do it.
Well, thank you. Turning it over to all of you now. Are there any questions? Anything at all? Oh, yeah. A few.
All right. I think it was mentioned that the timeline for getting the workforce on board with some of the electrical equipment was 3 years. Is that to where everyone was comfortable with it? I mean, what was that 3-year timeline? Is there anything you could have done retrospectively that would have quickened the pace a little bit?
That's a great question. I could have took out all the diesel forklifts and moved them. Honestly, I could have moved them, and then they wouldn't have a choice. But then that could have caused some more issues in the operation. They could have started red tagging all of my electric equipment. So it was a gradual approach. I mean, it was kind of strategic. So we, as the electrics came in, we had about 12 diesels. So little by little, as those aged out, and they had a higher cost on maintenance, we never replaced them, and we replaced them with an electric forklift. So then so now we have 20, and we have, I think, 4 left, and 2 of those are going to be gone soon. So it's kind of it was kind of a way to like say, okay, we want you to try something new, but also we understand there's going to be a learning curve and there's going to be a change factor. So, you know, we've tried it in the past to like just take away something from the workforce, the big union that we work with, and it doesn't work out well. So it's kind of engaging with them, telling them why we're doing it, and then kind of transitioning out of it. So then they all have that commitment to it as well, is what helped us.
And I'm sorry, can I ask a follow-up question? Did you do any sort of specific training for operation? I assume you had to. So how did that go?
Yeah, for us it was kind of a piece of energy that was taken out. So it was more of like on-the-job training, and then we would do it OTJ for the most part. It wasn't something that we had to take every individual to train on each machine. So it was just kind of a swap of energy to train. It was still the same functionality of the machine.
I had a question about labor acceptance, but you both have addressed that already. But kind of the piece I'm still curious about is that I've heard on the maintenance side that those kinds of jobs, if not going away, certainly are evolving. And so I'm curious from a practical standpoint, are you seeing a reduced need for labor on the maintenance side, and therefore there's still some objection to adopting the technology? Or are you finding other ways to use those workers who are, if they are displaced, can still kind of be productive in other areas of the port operations?
So in our case, that's a great question, by the way, thank you. It's more like repurposing, like in any operation. If it's containerization, if it's repurposing the role and maybe upskilling the staff. For us, I'll give you my example. For us, when we have less maintenance on the electric forklifts, it gives us more opportunity to, we have different types of cargo we move. So we have different attachments on the machines. So it gives them time to take off those attachments and put on like a probe for coils. And then we have a ship that night with rice. So we got to switch to rice attachments. So it kind of just helps with efficiency, actually, when the maintenance is minimal on the machine. But you still have tires, you still have hydraulics, you still have the carriage, you still have the so I see it helping in other ways to make it so their 8-hour shift is going to be used to actually work toward that not just fixing we'll call it a piston on a diesel, but more like, okay, let's switch the attachment to be more efficient. So that's kind of how we're looking at it right now.
I've got one more question. I guess when thinking about like a path towards electrification, especially as we think about smaller ports that maybe are constrained by the local grid, so start thinking way out here, right? What would you say or suggest as a measurable first step towards that? So again, if I'm thinking more of trajectory towards the horizon, versus I got to get from where I am today to there.
Yeah, it's hard. The hardest part is starting, right? So definitely that relationship. I spent 2 years on that relationship with the power company before I actually made headway. So it's not too early to start that conversation. Ultimately, I got to meet with the CEO of PG&E, which serves all of Northern California. So, ultimately I was successful, but I'm not going to say it was easy or there was any magic to it. It was a lot of hard work finding the right people, finding people who knew people who could get me into the people. So that particular question, I think, is one for everybody to start on, even if your dream is a year or 2 or 3 out. Start that relationship, build that relationship. With the power agency. Another opportunity, which is challenging because every acre is precious on a seaport. I know that. But are there opportunities for you to do self-generation? In my case, it doesn't make financial sense because I'm a utility. I buy solar farms in Southern California. I buy geothermal in Northern California, and I put that on the grid, and then I pay a transmission fee for PG&E to just, I get whatever electron they give me, but I'm 85% non-carbon sources right now. But you have, so it doesn't make sense for me. I buy the power so cheap to put in solar and battery and things like that. There's a few of those we're doing because it will make sense in certain areas, but a wholesale, no. But maybe for you it would. If you've got rooftops that don't take up more space, if you've got parking lots that you know are going to be there a while that don't take up more space. We have a lot of that actually, and some of our tenants are doing that on their own because they are a retail customer. So, and then the battery energy storage is really moving quickly. So you're going to be able to then store that energy if you're not needing all of it when it's being generated. And then you can use it later. And then there's more technologies coming around. There's still a lot of this is still nascent, so you can't deploy it next year. But there are a lot of technologies that are looking forward to even better energy generation that takes up less space. Yeah.
I would just add one thing. Find a grant, do a feasibility study. And that's the beginning. And then if you're your own terminal or you're a guest at a terminal, work with the Port Authority to do that same thing.
Thank you all. We should thank our 3